All right, hi everyone. We are back for the third time now. Hopefully, third time's the charm here. I have reset my internet and hoping that that will take us through the rest of this episode. I was just telling Tom, I'm the only one home right now. My computer is the only thing connected to the internet. I have turned everything off onto data or airplane mode, so I'm not sure what's going on. However, stream rate is looking good right now, so hopefully we can get a good hour in, 90 minutes in, something like that, to a good hour of some good internet.
Also, if any of the people watching are internet connectivity experts, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments as to what might be going on.
Yeah.
We can crowdsource the Wi-Fi.
Should we not use Zoom? Does Zoom take up a lot of bandwidth? Should we use some other video chat service? Let us know in the
All
chat.
this and more are questions that you guys could answer. Yes, you. But barring invaluable contributions from our beloved listeners on what software we're using, yeah, we both watched a couple of pretty important games the last couple nights. You saw the Heat beat the Celtics.
Mm-hmm.
The arena was pretty empty. So when you
Yes.
say it was at 10% capacity,
So
it's not even like a, oh yeah, we're only opening up like the bottom 4 rows around the court. Like it has to be 10% capacity, but also that 10% is like scattered throughout the whole arena.
So it was 20.
Right?
They actually just upped it to 25%, but like the day before we
Okay.
got there. But yeah, so it's scattered throughout the arena. So I went with my dad. We had 2 seats in the balcony front row, and there were like
Nice.
on either side of us, there were three seats that were like had like a band around them, like closing them, so no one could even
Yeah.
like try to sit there.
You couldn't.
So yeah, so there were 3 seats of space on each side of us, um, and there wasn't even anyone in the row behind us. The row behind us was completely blocked off. So it was like
Oh wow.
every row that you could sit in had like 25% of the seats available, and then every other row was just blocked off entirely. So it was very empty, very weird walking around halftime and at breaks and stuff. Just like not a lot of people doing anything. The garden's normally so crowded, so that was a bit odd. And
Yeah.
then just like kind of strange vibes there as well, just because, I mean, the Celtics fans are very disappointed in the Celtics. Um, they were hurling a ton of insults at the guys, especially in the fourth quarter and third quarter when the Heat kind of took control of the game. Um, Far more insults were being hurled at the Celtics than at the Heat. Um, there was a fairly big Tyler Hero fan club in the building. He got a lot of applause for every basket he was making. I thought that was interesting. You'd kind of think it would be the opposite way because of how well Tyler played in the
Yeah.
playoffs against Boston. But no, I guess it gained him
Yeah.
a good amount of fans. Um, but yeah, it was just great to be at a game again. It was a ton of fun. I forgot. It's probably like 2 years since I'd been to a game, honestly, and I forgot how much fun it is to even just like watching shoot around, seeing what guys are working on. Um, I think I mentioned to you that like Udonis Haslam was out there like doing an individual shoot
Yeah.
around at one point, like taking like a lot of like corner threes and everything. Spolstra said the other
Yeah.
day that he wants to get Udonis in for one game before the season ends. There's only 3 games left, so we'll see. So I don't know if he was practicing for that, but yeah, it was a good time.
This is a legit question. Has Udonis logged a minute this year?
No, not a single minute.
Oh Lord. Okay, so yeah, like he. Who are the final two games? They have the Bucks and the Sixers coming up.
Yeah, I think the last game is against the Pistons though.
Okay,
Um,
that one.
so maybe
That's your
it'll be
target.
then. Yeah, or maybe if we're getting blown out in one of these next two games. Um,
Yeah, that's the other way this could go. Is if it's just like 35 points in the third quarter, it's like, all right, yeah, get UD out there, let them
yeah,
rain breathe.
because who knows? I mean, there's. I hope they do because there's a good chance that's his last game.
Yeah. Well, do we know it's his last? He has said he's gonna like reassess in
Yeah,
the
no,
offseason, right?
he's still thinking about it. He's still thinking about whether he's retiring or not.
So
um,
yeah, I don't think we can definitively say that it's his last game.
that's true. But yeah,
I This is a good time to bring up my theory that you're actually just skirting around the league rule for the number of coaches you're allowed to have by paying Udonis Haslam a player salary, which I realize is not actually that smart if that is what they're doing, because like I'm pretty sure you have to pay players way more than you
yeah,
have to
no, you definitely do.
pay like assistant coaches. Like league minimum for a player is like over $1 million, and I think only head coaches really get that.
Yeah,
But I'm sticking with this theory. I think that he's actually just like a sneaky coach for them.
it seems like it. I mean, it was interesting to see in person, like how often he was the one, like all the starters when they were going out at the beginning of the game, going
Yeah,
out to the court. They
yeah,
all spoke to like Udonis was at the baseline or not the baseline was at the scorers table and like give
yeah,
like talk to each one as they went out and was giving them a high five and like no one else was there. It was just Udonis. So it does seem like whatever this reputation he has like that he's had for a while among Heat fans, but really got more popular last year in the finals when we had many
yeah.
many times of the ESPN crew like zooming into the bench to see Udonis like controlling the huddle or something. um, yeah, just
Yeah.
it does seem like that's just what his role is at this point. Maybe, yeah, I agree. I bet he's drawing stuff up. I bet he's doing like player development stuff while not technically being a player development coach. Like,
Yeah. That's where also like he's in such a unique position because I don't remember exactly what his first year in the league was, but at this point, like we're at what like the third or fourth generation of Heat players coming in. That's like, oh yeah, UD is the
yeah,
vet.
yeah,
Like I legitimately think like LeBron came into the Heat and it was like, yeah, UD is still the vet on this team, and that was a decade ago.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
And so it's like,
he's almost 41.
yeah, like Bam came in and it was like, oh yeah, UD is like the same age as my coach. He was like playing basketball when I was 4. Of course he's the vet. Like I feel like it's the kind of thing that doesn't really exist a lot in the NBA anymore. So it's cool to see.
Yeah, no, it's
Um,
really just
that being said, I'm hoping that we get Bomber UD because that
yeah,
would be amazing.
or maybe we're
Secret weapon to the Heat figuring it out is a guy who can play the 4 and shoot threes.
yeah, no, maybe we're saving him for the playoffs. We can't. We don't want him to get injured in the regular season.
Well, I mean, the Heat don't really have a history of players getting injured in the regular season. Who, I mean, did they have any injuries this year? I can't think of any.
Yeah, well, um, on that, I guess we can briefly talk about. I mean, the Heat have been playing really well recently, so I'm okay with it at this point. But Victor Oladipo is officially out for the rest of the season, and yeah, I mean, there's a chance this is the end of his Heat tenure. His contract's up. He played 4 games.
He was never a Heat player. That's a lie.
But yeah, it's
No,
weird.
but yeah, I mean, there's a really good chance that we've seen the last of him in a Heat uniform.
Yeah, I mean,
What did he get? 2 games?
he got 4. He was really good in the fourth one when he got injured on an open dunk.
on an open dunk that like wasn't even like a really big fast break dunk where he was like sprinting. Like it was, I want to say he like jumped off 2 feet,
Yeah, he did.
like hung there for a second, landed normally, and it was just like no, nope, something's not right with this one.
No, yeah. I feel like
It's
we'll
it's not
talk
too
about
bad
this
though.
when we talk about the free agency stuff, but like I feel like
Yeah,
he can't like there's no way he can demand anything more than like 12 to 15 million at this point.
yeah, I could almost see him doing like a prove it deal
Or even
where it's like,
less.
all right, yeah, I'll play for you for a year
Like 5
just to
million.
like show that I can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, although what? How old is he at this point too? Because
He's like
like,
28.
okay, so yeah, I mean, 29 isn't like prohibitively old to sign a big deal if you like play your way into it. Like if he does the I'll go approve it route, and then we'll see. But it's sad to see what injuries did to his career because I feel like this is the first big injury was like right as he was starting to blow up,
Mhm.
and then like came back last year, never really caught up to the game before the game stopped, and then the playoffs started, and it was like, all right, yeah, now this is way too fast for me.
Mhm.
Um, and then obviously you have this, which wound up requiring surgery. Do we know what the actual injury was, or have the Heat kind of just
It's
been
something with his
cagey
quad,
on that?
which is interesting because for the
Okay,
longest
that's
time they were reporting that it was something with his knee. But
well. This is the other quad, right? Like this isn't the one that he ruptured the
yeah.
tendon in last or two
No,
years
yeah,
ago,
I think it's the other
which is
quad.
concerning
Yeah.
in its own way.
You
Like
know,
I'm
it's
really,
hard.
I'm not sure if it's like more concerning that it's a different one, or if it would be more concerning if it was the same one. But either way, it's very not good. Um,
But yeah, regardless, the Heat I've enjoyed how they've been playing over the last like 15 or so games. I think we're something like 13-7, 14-6, something like that on the last 20.
all right,
So we've been looking good. We're at the highest point above 500 that we've been all season right now. We're 7 games over.
nice.
And the offense is peaking at a really nice time. There was, I saw something yesterday, very bizarre. Up until April 1st, the Heat were 25th in offense and 6th in defense. Um, since April 1st, the Heat have been 5th in offense and like 20th in defense. Um,
My God,
so very bizarre. Hopefully those things meet together in the playoffs. Um,
yeah,
but I'm just
that's
happy
where
to.
even
Hmm?
I feel like you'd even take like, all right, yeah, we'll be like 15th in defense or like 15th in offense and like 12th in defense,
Yeah,
and we can ride with that.
yeah,
Like just have both things sort of clicking at the same time.
yeah. That would be good. um,
Um,
then Tom, the other
let's
big
see.
game of that night on Tuesday was the Knicks Lakers game.
Yeah, the Knicks play the Lakers. So I mean, this one coming into it, the big thing was like, will LeBron play? Um, and if LeBron had played, I would have been there and been like, all right, yeah, there's no way they win this one. Then it came out the day of that LeBron was not going to play, and then I was like, all right, yeah, there's a chance. Like we might actually sneak this one in, which would have been huge because like the way the tiebreaker works in the East for 4, 5, 6 right now is if any of Atlanta, Miami, or New York has a worse record than the other two, then that team is obviously sixth. If they all have the same record, then the Knicks fall to
Mm.
sixth because they don't have the tiebreaker with the Heat, and because it would be a three-way tie, Atlanta would be fourth because they're a division champ. Because as we all know, divisions in the NBA
Yeah,
to this day matter quite a bit.
I don't know why it's that and not the
Like
fact that like that's crazy. It should be just what are they? What do we know? Who? What's the Heat Hawks head to head this year?
I think the Knicks have it with Atlanta and the Heat have it with the Knicks. So I think Atlanta has to have it with the Heat for
I
this to come into play.
Yeah, I think
Because
they
if
do.
Atlanta had it, or if the Heat had it then Atlanta would just be sixth.
So yeah, I don't know.
Um,
Understand
but
because
yeah, so like
I saw that
basically,
same talking point where they said like Atlanta gets fourth over Miami because they have the division.
I think it's.
But the
I'm
Heat.
assuming that like the way their tiebreaker works is if there's three, we can't just do head to head for the two. Like
Oh, okay.
if we're knocking the Knicks down to sixth based on head to head, then we can't just like differentiate between the top two based off it. Like it's weird, and I feel like we're in the only situation where a division winner would actually factor in. But we're here, and unfortunately, it works out against both of our teams.
It does.
Although, like Miami plays Atlanta.
Yeah. Remember
Did they
when?
play you guys tough?
Yeah, they did.
Hmm.
I didn't really like
So I think they tried to.
playing Atlanta this year. Remember when, like 5 or 6 years ago, they ended this, but remember when being a division leader meant that you automatically got a top four seed?
I do, and I hate it.
That
It's
was
a stupid rule.
it was a really stupid rule. I remember the most notable example of that. I think it was in 2014 or 2015. Portland had
Oh yeah,
won their division, but had like the seventh best record, but was the
yeah.
fourth seed because they won their division. Just an insane rule.
Well, and that's where they're in like that weird Northwest division, right? Where it's like the T Wolves, them, I think the Kings, and like
The Jazz, maybe.
let's see, I'm pulling it up right now. Yeah. So the Northwest division is the T Wolves, the Thunder because they were formerly in Seattle, but now that doesn't make sense at all because they're in Oklahoma. Uh, the Blazers, Denver, and Utah.
Mm. Yeah.
So like it, yeah, they won their division and were like maybe the seventh or eighth best team. But it's like it's similar to what the NFL has, where it's like, yeah, if you win your division, you cannot be a wild card team, and you get a home playoff game no matter what. And so then you have like 7 and 9 teams
Mm.
um, hosting playoff games against teams that are like 13 and 3, and it's weird and bizarre and doesn't make sense. But this is all a long way of saying the Knicks kind of needed this game against the Lakers, not in like the strictest sense of like if we don't win this, it's all going to be over, but the tiebreaker is not going to be friendly to them. So like the best case scenario for them would be, hey, just finish a game ahead of Atlanta or Miami, and they didn't get this game. It was tough because like they really kind of lost it 8 or 9 times, and I'm gonna go through all of the things that happened within the final like 7 minutes of regulation and then overtime to lose this game.
Go for it.
So for starters, like Frank hit a three with 7 minutes to go to put them up 10, which capped off like a really good game, a really good stretch for Frank. He had a really good game. Then the Knicks, as they often do in late in close games, they had a really hard time getting shots off because the game slows down. It becomes more half-courty, and they don't have a lot of players that can just sort of create something there. It's basically Julius, Derrick Rose, and maybe RJ on an off possession, but we will get to that because there was an RJ possession that was very off later in this game. But yeah, so the Knicks, gradually just kind of stalled the offense. And let's see, their final offensive possession, they give the ball to Julius, which, like, yeah, sure, fine. Andre Drummond comes over to double him. He doesn't pass out until it's like a second left on the shot clock, at which point Reggie can't get a shot up. They get a shot clock violation. Yeah. So that's, first off, yeah, the final offensive possession is a shot clock violation. Then on the final possession defensively, they gave up a wide open look in the corner. I forget who took it, but they gave it up. And it was somebody where I was like, oh, this is going in. It comes out and you're like, cool, okay, the Knicks are they're out of the woods here. Nope. Wes Matthews flies in from the top of the key for a putback, which I'm assuming was just somebody ball watching, because it's like, yeah, they're not going to get up another shot if he misses. And then he gets up the only kind of shot that could kill you there. And then after that, there were like 3 seconds left. The Knicks took a timeout. and Julius got like a floater runner kind of look, which he missed, which I'm not as pissed at because that's not really a shot that he has in his like arsenal. Like it's just not something he really goes for.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also a weird in between look because it's like, all right, you probably don't want to go all the way up for a full layup because the ball might be on your hand when the buzzer goes, but you also don't want to just stop and take this because you have an alien behind you who's probably going to swat it if you do that. So like I get that he's kind of caught in between there, but he missed what was ultimately a pretty open shot to put it away. And then once this game went to overtime, I think I texted you like, yeah, this was a loss as soon as it went past regulation. Tibbs took the final timeout with like 50 seconds to play on a possession where like they'd been slow getting the ball up past half court, and Julius was kind of just over the line and like very closely defended. So like I can see why he took it because he was like, we're not going to get a good shot out of this. But immediately when he took the timeout, I was like, that's going to come back to bite him. And then after that timeout, the play they draw up winds up with Julius getting trapped and forced into a travel. The same double team that came at the end of regulation with Andre Drummond happens again. He travels. We're going the other way. The Knicks are, I think, up 1 at this point.
Yeah.
They get a stop or they get a steal going back down the other way. D Rose made a fantastic play and then threw it back, like came up behind THT going towards the baseline and then like threw it back behind him to Reggie to keep it in. And then the Knicks came back. Julius hit an insane 3, put him up 2. And then then they gave up the THT shot, which honestly was the thing I was most okay with in this because like this is the NBA. Sometimes dudes just make really incredibly tough looking shots. Like Julius had just made one of his own. So I can live with just, hey, this guy made a 3 that, we did most of what we could.
Yeah.
And then there was the final possession, which
let's break that down.
Was all sorts of ugly. Yeah, so I mean, Nekias Duncan, who shout out to him, put up a really good breakdown of this. But basically what it looked like, what he said happened on that possession was they were trying to get Reggie Bullock clearing out, like going down towards the baseline and clearing out towards the corner and getting Julius lifting up to the wing to create some like stress on Wes Matthews, who was defending Reggie. And you figure, all right, yeah, like D Rose will come off a pick at the top of the key. If he has a look, he'll take it, or he can kick it to the corner for Reggie, depending on which way Wes Matthews goes. But then Reggie didn't get to the corner fast enough, so Wes Matthews wound up just being able to sit right in the lane where D Rose was trying to drive, and the kick out wasn't there because Reggie was basically on the other side of the lane, so like easily defendable by any of 3 players. So then they reversed it. They got it to RJ. D Rose cleared out to the left side of the wing, and you wound up with just like 3 guys in a triangle like that. In a triangle, like one here, one here, one here, RJ here. And like Taj Gibson set a screen for RJ to go right, even though RJ is left-handed. And also Anthony Davis was on his right. So they screened him into Anthony Davis and then into just a trio of like AD, Drummond, and Wes Matthews. They were all able to help onto him because Julius and Derrick Rose were way too high up the court to actually be like shooting threats that they needed to stay on. And yeah, we wound up with a really ugly looking shot from RJ that didn't go. And I mean, it was a 5-person failure that RJ just kind of had to take the brunt of, which is really unfortunate. But yeah, ultimately, like they lost that game 7 or 8 times at least. And it sucks, but they've got the Spurs tonight. I think they have Charlotte, and then they have Boston. So, like, theoretically, they could win out. I don't think they would. Actually, let's see what the exact schedule is. They've got the Spurs tonight.
3 teams that all want to win.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, Charlotte, San Antonio, and then Boston all are kind of playing for seeding at this point.
Yeah.
Which isn't, they're not playing for like 1 seeds. They're not playing for their lives. Or San Antonio, I think, semi is because they still could lose their spot to Sacramento. but they would have to lose out, and Sacramento would have to win out for that to happen. Boston and Charlotte, I think, are like clinched in the play-in, but it's just a matter of how many games they're going to have to win to get into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're playing three teams that aren't great, but all want to win. Atlanta has, I think, Orlando and Detroit left, which I said this to you last night. If they lose, it'll be hilarious.
It will, but
I don't think they will.
We've been expressing a lot of mutual frustration at Atlanta not losing for the last, what are they on? They've only won 2 straight, but 6-4 in their last 10. They're kind of turning it on. Or not turning it on, but just...
It's frustrating because they got the Wizards in the 2 games that Bradley Beal isn't playing.
Yeah.
And, like, if Bradley Beal plays, I think I said this last week, like, I would have bet on Atlanta losing one or even losing both before I would have bet on them winning both.
Mm-hmm.
But thankfully for me, unthankfully for you, the Heat have Philly and Milwaukee as 2 of their final 3. How do you feel about those games?
Well, so funny you mentioned Philly. Our friend James has actually just joined the chat.
Hey, James.
So hi, James. I would look this up, but James can just answer the question for us. Do we know if Embiid is playing tonight? I know it was questionable, so that's really going to determine how I'm feeling about this.
This is a live Google search on air. Joel Embiid is questionable.
Okay.
For tonight's game.
So Joel Embiid is questionable. Jimmy is also questionable. Oh, this is a thing that I forgot to mention about the Heat Celtics game was that Jimmy got poked in the eye in the second quarter and was out for the rest of the game.
I think yeah.
So that was kind of a scary moment, just not seeing him come back in the second half, but they ended up rallying around really well. We got like probably one of the 3 or 4 best hero games of the season. Okay, James is saying that Embiid didn't even travel to Miami, so probably not playing.
Oh, good. Well, not good, but...
So we might get an Embiid-less Sixers.
Heat.
In that sense, I feel okay about it. Is anyone else hurt, James?
You got to feel way better with Embiid out.
Yeah. And with everything clicking right now?
Real quick, I'll be back in a sec.
Okay. I will check to see the injury report for Philly. Okay, Matisse is questionable. Okay. Yeah, I think I feel okay about that game. I would really just like the Heat to end up winning 2 out of these last 3. That would probably be the best. I can't see us winning all 3, although that would be pretty cool and a really nice way to like really show that we're clicking to end the season. But I just want to not have to play Milwaukee in the first round, even though I feel pretty good about our Milwaukee matchup. And we'll really see that this weekend when we play them in our second to last game of the season. I would just much rather have to deal with like New York or Atlanta for right now. But yeah. So the rest of the season schedule, as we were just saying, the Heat have Philly, Milwaukee, and Detroit. Atlanta has, what was that again? They have Orlando. Sorry, kind of struggling to go.
All right, I'm back.
Okay. Yeah, no, good. I wasn't doing a great job vamping. But yeah, Hawks have Rockets. The Hawks are playing just teams that need it would be far more beneficial for them to lose. Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
It's annoying. I selfishly am rooting for the Heat to lose, but I think the dream for this show, which was a Miami New York first round series, is probably escaping us.
yeah, I mean, I was I didn't want to say this when we were watching the when we were talking about the game, but I was selfishly rooting for the Knicks to lose on Tuesday. um,
Yeah,
but because I'd much rather play Atlanta than Milwaukee in the first round. But I think to get
absolutely.
together, we can just hope that Atlanta loses one of these games in a very embarrassing fashion.
Yeah, yeah. Like this is what the Atlanta Hawks have done to us, to this once great NBA program. They have made us root for each other's teams to lose. And I frankly think they should be ashamed of themselves for it.
Um,
Um, but I think that about covers seeding and play-in talk.
yes.
Do we want to get some awards?
Yeah. Should we just do a quick look at the West playing?
Actually, yeah, that's a good idea. Portland, as I realized this morning, is currently the 5 seed,
Yes.
which is wild to
Yes.
me.
They've jumped up to five.
Yeah.
They are playing well at an important time. They are 9-1 in their last 10. Um, Pretty crazy.
Oh yeah.
Dallas is 8-2 in their last 10. Golden State is 7-3 in their last 10. And then the Lakers are 5-5. They've won their last three, but because of Dallas and Portland playing so well recently, they've like made up zero ground.
Yeah.
And they have 2 games left and are a game back. And
Okay.
let's see, who are the Lakers playing in their last 2 games?
So Dallas has the Raptors and the T Wolves in their final two.
Okay, two
Those
teams that need to
should be
lose. Yeah.
those should be wins, but the Raptors feel like a team that could win a weird one, but Dallas should win those.
Portland has Phoenix tonight,
Yeah.
and where's the next one?
Denver.
Denver. Oof. Okay, that's tough.
And like a Phoenix and a Denver team, both of whom are like technically still playing for seeding, maybe. Because like Phoenix still could be the 1 seed. It's probably not going to be the 1 seed, but they could
Yeah, and then the
because they're a game and a half back in Utah, but they have a game in hand, uh, and I think they have a tiebreaker, but it's
Mhm.
like still possible.
Yeah,
Um,
and you're probably wanting to not be, especially not want to be in the 2 seed spot right now with the Lakers looming as the 7th seed.
yes, and then on the Denver end of things, like they still could wind up 6, but like, or they
Mm.
still could wind up 3. Um, but then the question is like, all right, would you rather play Dallas or would you rather play Portland? I think you'd rather play Portland of the two, and you don't know exactly. Actually, if you're Denver, you could help yourself wind up playing Portland by just losing to Portland. That's an interesting one.
Oh, wait, when do they play?
They play the final game of the season, Sunday, 9 p.m.
Hmm.
Eastern.
That'll be very interesting.
Like, if you're Denver, do you just rest Jokic and be like, yeah, we've already lost one of our best players. We don't want to get another one of our franchise players hurt before the playoffs. Nobody ask about why we are doing this against Portland specifically. But yeah, like if Denver plays everyone, they'll probably beat Portland. But there's a chance, like, could think about just resting everybody.
Good.
To wrap this up, who do the Lakers have in their final two?
The Lakers in their final 2, they have a back-to-back Saturday and Sunday.
Oof.
They have 3 days off right now, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, they have Pacers on Saturday and the Pelicans on Sunday.
So not necessarily difficult games, but like just games that might be taxing.
Yeah, I mean, it's all dependent on whether LeBron's going to play. He hasn't been playing. He keeps like
Yeah.
saying he might play. We had reports that he was going to play against the Knicks and the Rockets that were like quickly dashed away as
Yeah,
like as soon as game time was coming. Um,
it's weird.
I assume he comes back for these two because the Lakers have to win out. They can't go 1-1.
Yeah, it would make sense. Like they could win out and still be in the play-in.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's scary.
Hmm.
And then you're going into one game against maybe Steph Curry, probably Steph Curry, with LeBron having not played in like played what 2 games in the past 4 months, three
Yeah.
months.
Something like that.
Like that's terrifying. Even
Um,
more so than the regular one game against Steph is.
yeah. Yeah, I'm really fascinated by the potential Lakers seventh seed situation. I mean, you saw in
Yeah,
it felt like a omen, a weird bad omen or something with in the post game presser that Davis had with TNT after the Knicks game, where he was like, "Yeah, we're fine with being in the play and like looking like we might play like Phoenix or something." And for a second, I was like, when he said that, I was just thinking like, "Oh God!" Like after this great
yeah.
feel good Phoenix season, are they really gonna have to lose to the Lakers in the first round? Their best season in 10 years.
It's funny. I feel like Phoenix has been avoiding a lot of the like, okay, we don't actually believe you backlash because Utah has been the 1 seed for so much of this season.
Hmm.
But like, it would be really sad if after such a like big season for them, it's just like, all right, yeah, cool. Here, have a cookie, and then get swept in round one because the team that won the championship last year had a lot of injuries.
Hmm.
Like, that would suck.
Yeah, that would really suck. Um, but yeah, I hope that doesn't happen for Phoenix's sake. I've really enjoyed, as much as like we've make fun of like Utah being really good this year and like them being also technically a similar type of feel good story of like a team that
Yeah.
is like one of the best teams in the league, kind of out of nowhere. I don't know. I think we probably both find Phoenix to be a far more likable team. Um,
Yeah.
and
Which
I would
shocking
love,
that Chris Paul wound up in that role.
yeah, I would love for Utah to end up in two to get rolled by the Lakers in the first round. But I really don't want to see that happen to Phoenix and that happen to like
Yeah.
Booker and Bridges and Aiton, and I've just grown really fond of those guys this year.
Yeah, like they're a fun team. They do a lot of things that are really cool, but they're also just actually good at basketball, and I want to see them. I'm more interested in seeing them in like a late playoff series against the Clippers or the Nug. Well, Denver's, an interesting case this year, but like against the Clippers or even a like later series against the Lakers.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because like that's like they could play the Lakers round one and have like a 6 game series or something, but still it's a first round exit.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter how much fun the series is to them because they lose. But yeah, so right now it's looking like Portland's going to have a tough time. Dallas shouldn't have that tough a time, and the Lakers probably won't. They might. Like they have 2 games that they should win. 2
Hmm.
games against worse teams than the Knicks team that they just beat.
Hmm.
With that, Dave, we're doing some award talk today.
Yes. So we're actually going to give our final awards picks for MVP, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Most Improved, and the Sixth Man. Now, I have some of my awards a little bit more formal than others. I'd say my most formal here I have our MVP and Rookie of the Year. And then the others are a bit more just kind of
Abstract.
lists of guys. Um, so, but I've narrowed it down. So, how do you want to do this?
Um, do we want to do MVP first or last?
I would actually think I kind of want to do it first.
Okay.
But if you don't mind, I just want to get a little bit more coffee. I'll be 2
Yeah, of
seconds.
course. Do what you got to do. I'll vamp for the people for a bit. Wait, did you say you want to do it first or last? Sorry. All right, everybody. So while Dave's getting coffee, I think the thing that was interesting for me while picking these awards is there are a few players who I'm going to be honest. I started on this vamp and then I just sort of ran out of gas. But yeah, so the MVP has been a weird one this year, mainly because like I think we kind of consolidated around Jokic sometime in April or like late March, and like he was already kind of in the front running for it before that, but then that like March April was when we kind of just agreed, okay, yeah, no, it's Jokic. We can stop doing all of the other stuff. Um, but it's interesting because like the only people I've really heard discussed as favorites other than him this season were Embiid and LeBron. And LeBron is his own case that I'll get to, but Embiid has missed 20 games so far this year. Will miss his 21st tonight. So he kind of fell out by default. And then there was the LeBron thing, which like I think we're just going to do this every year with LeBron at this point, where it's like, well, he's doing this in year what? He should be the MVP. We know he's the MVP every year. And it's like, I feel like we're going to do that with him in perpetuity because he deserves to have more MVPs than he does. He probably deserves to have that Derrick Rose one. Although, like, that was mostly just voter fatigue, I think, when you look at, like, he won the two before it and the two after it. So 5 in a row would have been insane. Like nobody's ever won more than 3 in a row. Hey man, I'm talking about LeBron's MVP case that fell apart. Are we just gonna do like he should be the MVP because he's doing this at this age, and also watch him play and tell me he shouldn't be the MVP? Like, are we just gonna do that every year?
Yes, I think we're doing that until he retires.
Because like this year we were doing it. We were doing it this year until he got hurt, but we were very like the buzz was still alive of like this is year 17. He's running point. He's shooting better than he ever has. Like on a shortened rest season, like we were doing it again this year.
Yeah, no, I mean, like when I was putting together my list today, like he has without the games missed, he has a pretty good case.
Yeah.
Like if you're just looking at it stats wise and knowing like narrative wise what the Lakers have been with and without him this year, he actually does have a great case to be like top 3 if he didn't miss 27 games.
Oh, absolutely. Like that's because I feel like he's in this place where we still think he's still probably the best player in the NBA when he wants to be. But like, has he been the most valuable this year? Probably not. Not to rehash the most overdone conversation in like MVP discussions ever, but you know, the best player could be different from the most valuable player in a given year. So did you say you wanted to do MVP first or last? I
want to do it first.
All right, let's do it first. Let's go. Let's kick off with the MVP.
Okay, so I have a 5-1 situation here.
All right. I also have a 5-1.
Okay. Are we starting?
You want to start?
Sure. Or do we want to do any guys that were on the periphery first, or say that for the
I'll
end?
say Dame was my 6th.
Okay.
Dame Lillard was my 6th over. Just like I wanted to put him in, but then I started looking at it. I started trying to make the case, and I wound up not really seeing like a much stronger case than the one for someone who wound up in 5th, who I will get to. But yeah. So okay. Dame was somebody that I wanted to have on this list, but couldn't.
That's fair. One guy that's not on my list because and I'm sorry to our friend James, I think he's missed too many games. I don't have Joel Embiid on my 5.
Yeah, fair.
I don't, for similar reasons. Here are 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 people that are on my long list, but I was not even considering for the top 5 because I thought they missed too many games.
Okay.
Embiid.
Yeah.
Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah.
Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
Paul George. And Jimmy Butler are 6 guys.
Okay. Yeah,
I think 5 or 6 guys who I think, and LeBron. Too many games. They missed way too many games. And then Harden and Durant are just like even another level of missing too many games because Durant's missed like 40. And Harden has point. And yeah, it
They're
was
both in the 30s in games played.
hmm?
They're both in the 30s in
Yeah,
games played.
yeah. Um, and then yeah, I thought that was interesting that I mean, I ended up looking at Kyrie for a little bit as like the net that would be in the discussion. He's played the most games out of all of them. He's had a really nice year. Um, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, I feel like have both had fantastic years that no one has talked about at all. Um, Especially,
Right.
I mean, we know how good Kawhi is, but like, I think it's still a little under talked about how efficient Paul George has been this year. Like, it's really kind of like historic levels of efficiency that he's shooting this year.
Yeah.
Um, and then who was the other one I said? Oh, Embiid. Too many games missed for me. And then yeah, and then the other guys on my periphery that you'll be happy. One guy who I is in my so I listed 14 guys. One guy who is in my 14, but
But
is
not in the top five.
but is not in the top five is Rudy Gobert. I do
Oh,
think
okay.
he
Thank God.
I do think he actually had an okay case. He's only missed one game. I'm just gonna run off some. Look, the case for Gobert is all advanced stat stuff as
Yes.
usual. Um,
And like team stats.
yeah.
Because like
So
to be fair, he's the best, and we'll get to this with defensive player of the year, but like he's the all-around best defender on I think one of the five best defensive
yeah,
teams in the NBA.
I
It's
think they're
also
third.
the one seed this year.
Yeah.
So like there's the team case for it too, but individually it kind of falls apart.
So I'm just gonna do the quick little case on to why actually I think Gobert has a decent chance to be in like the sixth or seventh spot.
I'm gonna
Um,
shake my head for all of it.
Okay, so here are the advanced stats. So of the 14 guys that I have, so these are the guys that I've listed, and the five on my list who I haven't said anything about yet. Um, Gobert is second among all those guys in win shares. He is third among all those guys in real plus minus. Okay, this one is less in his favor. He's third last, so what would that be 12th in box plus minus,
Get him
and
out of there.
sixth or no eighth in value over replacement player. So the win shares
What?
and the RPM stats really help him out. But the thing is, he's not like at the bottom of any of these on the advanced stats list, and in a couple of them, he's like in the top three. So I think
Yeah.
there's an interesting case to be made there. And then obviously he tops like every single defensive advanced stat you can think of. He's at the top of it.
My my issue with win shares is like a pretty one that's pretty easy to get to, which is just that like of
It's
course he's at the top of
yeah,
win shares because he's on the best team.
yeah, no, that one's fair. It's also cumulative, so it's going to hurt guys who play less games. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, and then there's one other person who's not on my list, but I'm going to say I strongly considered for fifth, but I couldn't do it. And that's Julius Randle. Sorry, but I strongly considered him, and
Oh.
he's in the 14 that I listed. So,
Oh, he's top 14. Good.
so with that in mind, who's your number five?
My number five is Steph Curry.
Okay.
He's going to win the scoring title this year, I think, like in all likelihood. Um, Steph, despite being on a team that like was not a playoff team for most of this year, or like was barely in playoff contention for most of this year, uh, had a run that I don't think anybody else in the league has touched as far as just being on fire for like 10 games in a row in the middle of the year. Like Saturday night primetime Steph was fully in motion this year in a way that it hadn't been for a couple of years because he was hurt last year. And it was awesome. Like there's really nothing else to say. The Warriors also, for like real cases, outside of just, hey, I had fun watching him, that Warriors team without him might be the worst team in the league.
Yeah.
Because like they drafted a 19-year-old big man with the second overall pick, and then were shocked to find out that he was a little bit raw. But really, this was just like this would have been Draymond and like the dregs, or like not the dregs, but you know, like Draymond and a bunch of like fringe NBA players trying to navigate this. They might have been like Detroit, Houston levels of bad, like Minnesota levels of bad without Steph.
Yeah.
Instead, they're going to be in the playing game, or in the playing tournament, probably making the playoffs. If we want to go over Steph's stats, I looked it up today. He's averaging 31, 5, and 5 this year, I was shocked to find out he was a 5 rebound a game player as a guard. I can get you the exact shooting splits.
I got him up if you want him.
Sweet, yeah, give him to me.
He's shooting 48% from the field, 42% from 3 on something like, I think, 11 attempts a game. True shooting percentage at
attempts a game.
Yeah, true shooting percentage at 66%, which, to put into context, is only a little bit less than Rudy Gobert, who only dunks.
Yeah, like 60% of Steph's shots at this point, if I'm reading this correctly, are threes. And he's true shooting 66%. That's insane.
Yeah. Should I say something if the guy you said is on my list? Should we do it like that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I had Steph.
You already said about a guy who's on my list that's not on your list, but that's a separate discussion.
Yeah, no, I think if it comes up on our lists as we're doing it, then let's talk about them at once, so we're not talking about them twice.
All right, yeah.
I have Steph at 3rd, for all the reasons you were just saying. I don't really have too much to add there, but I was also going to make the argument that he is, like, again, I know we always do this with what does this award mean, what we are going to make the argument of who has been the most valuable to their team in terms of raising the ceiling of the team. I think it's really hard to not go with Steph. The team has not been good enough for me to consider him in like the 2nd or 1st spot of this award, but he is putting together like another historic season in this like stretch, this like last 5 or 6 year stretch, with the exception of last year where he barely played. That's like, you know, up there with one of like the greatest stretches by any player ever. And yeah, he has kind of become like the almost like pinnacle version of what people would hope he would be. Because, you know, a couple of months ago there was all this thing of like, well, maybe the Warriors, maybe Kerr should just let Steph shoot more. Like, and then they started doing that, and that's when he went on that historic run in the month of in March and April. So
just put him in the pick and rolls. It's so easy, sir.
So yeah, I had Steph at 3rd for all the reasons that you mentioned.
Also, I think like we haven't even mentioned, like we only briefly mentioned that he's going to win the scoring title, but also like he's averaging his highest scoring. He's averaging the most points per game that he's had since that 2015-16 year where he was the unanimous MVP.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's reached a peak that only he has reached before, really, as a shooter at least.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm glad we both have Steph on there. I feel like he deserves some insane amount of credit for what he's done this year because it's truly ridiculous. Who do you have at 4?
Oh no, so I got to do my 5.
Oh yeah, you have to do your 5.
Actually,
Who's
yeah.
your 5?
Actually, should we just do 5 to 1 then, and not jump around?
Let's hear the 5.
No, I mean, like, should we not be jumping around, like, if you bring someone up, because doesn't that like ruin the drama a little bit?
I mean, maybe, but I'm assuming that your 5th best won't be one of my top 4, because I know that Julius Randle's not on your list, and I'm assuming you won't have any of my top 3 at 5.
Okay, that's fair. Also, the one advanced stat thing that I'll bring up for Steph, his real plus minus, which is like ESPN's attempt at trying to really quantify value.
Right.
You know,
they tried it with PER and you can do it again.
Yeah, so it's like really what value are they bringing on the court? How much are they impacting winning? And he leads the league in that. His is 7.24. Second is LeBron, and as previously mentioned, 3rd is Rudy Gobert. So you can take the stat with a grain of salt if you want to because of that.
I plan to, just because of Rudy Gobert.
But yeah. So okay, my I don't know if you're gonna have him on your list. My slightly annoying number 5 pick is going to be Chris Paul.
That's actually a good pick. I didn't have him in my top five, but I should have.
So Chris Paul doesn't
Please
have
state the case.
the flashy numbers case for this year. He is averaging 16 points a game, 5 rebounds, 9 assists, about a steal and a half on like pretty close to 50, 40, 90 shooting, pretty much 60% true shooting. But it's also the narrative case here of, let me get up their exact record last year.
Can I just go on a brief tangent about narrative while you do that?
Yes.
Yeah, so I feel like every year we say that the MVP is a narrative award, and we say that as if it invalidates the award entirely. I don't like that line of thinking because I feel like a lot of the time the narrative that people are so mad at existing is just some variation of, hey, this guy's really good at basketball this year, and he's doing something that like we've either never seen before, we've only seen once before by some of the greatest players ever, or we've only seen him do before. Like, I think if you look at like the year Steph won it unanimously, we had never seen anybody have a shooting season like that. If you look at the year Russell Westbrook had the average triple double and won the MVP, we had only ever seen Oscar Robertson do that, and we hadn't seen anyone do that in 50 years. And the game was entirely different in 2018 than it was in like 1960. And then you look at last year when Giannis won it. Like, he had a prime Shaq season plus a couple of assists, a thing we had only seen prime Shaquille O'Neal do, who might be one of the 5 most dominant basketball players ever. So if you're saying this is a narrative award, I would ask you to say what the narrative is that you're annoyed at, and then kindly shut up when you realize that it's just us saying he's really good at basketball and trying to find ways to say that are not just, hey, he's really good. That's my old man yelling at a cloud rant. Dave, sorry to cut you off.
No, don't worry. I was glad someone said that. But I think the big case with Chris Paul, and obviously a lot of the guys around him have gotten better too.
Right.
But the big case with Chris Paul is that last year Phoenix finished 34 and 39. The year before that, they were 19 and 63. The year before that, 21 and 61. The year before that, 24 and 58. The year before that, 23 and 59. The team this year is not fundamentally that different than the team last year. And the biggest difference is Chris Paul. Chris Paul has also only missed 1 game this season. He is top 5 in that real plus minus stat that we were talking about. And when you watch these Suns games, especially at the end of games, you have to think like, this is kind of an intangible thing that I am just like arguing from like what I've seen when I'm watching them. But all of the guys on the Suns, like Ayton, like Booker, like Bridges, Cam Johnson, all these guys have gotten better this year. You could argue that Ayton's gotten a little bit worse on offense, but he's become a way better defensive center. Booker is shot selection and like just basketball IQ seems significantly higher than it ever has been before. Mikal Bridges has turned into this elite role player. All these things are connected with the way like Chris Paul runs everything on the team. And I think we've had enough evidence over the last couple years that Chris Paul can just kind of show up somewhere and turn a team around. And yeah, so I have him at 5th because I don't think the numbers are really there for a real convincing top 3 finish for the MVP. But in terms of value, I really do think that like the Suns would be like a very middling team without them. We're looking at literally like the second best team in the NBA. Who has almost an identical roster to the one they did last year with the additions of Paul and Crowder.
And like the thing I think also is, you say they finished 34 and 39 last year. They finished 34 and 39 after winning the final 8 games in a row of the season. They were 26 and 39 going into the bubble. Also, Chris Paul's like 35. He's in his 15th year in the league as a 6-footer. It's insane to still be this good and like have this much control over the game at that age, at that size. Like, that's really not something we see.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of guys on these lists that sorry, I actually completely lost where my train of thought was going to be there. But
Oh yeah, fine. I mean, I
that's
feel like the only I might be misremembering this, but I feel like the only player that really had this kind of longevity at point guard that like that also had the peaks that Chris Paul has had would be like a John Stockton, who we
yeah.
consider like one of the best point guards ever. Which, to be fair, is a class I think we also put Chris Paul in at this point. And all this is to just say I think that Chris Paul is a really good person to have in the top 5 for the MVP. And I'm bummed out that I did not include him in my top 5.
Well, who is
So
your
you
number
had Steph
five?
at 3.
Did
Oh,
you
my
do?
number 5 was Steph.
Oh yes. So shouldn't you do your four, and then I'll do my four?
Yeah, I can do my 4. My 4 was Julius Randle. Um, is it a slightly homer pick? Yeah. No, that's completely true. Um, I think the preseason over under for wins for the Knicks this year was 22. Now 22 wins in the season would have presumably put them in the bottom 5 teams in the league. They would have been right in front of or behind the Cleveland Cavaliers right now. They would have been right in front of the Orlando Magic right now. They would have been one game better than the Oklahoma City Thunder right now if they were like right on that line. They are not. The Knicks are currently the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference, hopefully going to be the 5 seed. They have won 38 games. Hopefully they win 40 or 41 games, which would be almost double that total. The only real like the only real changes they've made to their roster have been adding like Reggie Bullock. Actually, no, they had Reggie Bullock. Have been adding like Nerlens Noel, Derrick Rose, and Alec Burks to a team that last year, please hold while I look up the Knicks 2019 to 20 record. Last year, they were 21 and 45. They did not get invited to the bubble because they were not close enough to making the playoffs to get an invite. Nothing really changed on this roster except Julius Randle just got a lot better. He became and I believe an all NBA caliber player. He sneaky rose to like a really good defender. He had never shot above 27% from 3 in his life. He's now at 41%.
Ridiculous. I didn't even realize
his career high.
I didn't even realize that until today when I was looking at Julius's stats. It's ridiculous, the 3-point jump. Like, has anyone ever had a 3-point jump like that?
I don't know if anyone's ever had a jump like that, but like I do remember I think the year the Warriors won 73 games, I think Draymond shot like 39%, and he's been like 31% every other year of his career.
Yeah.
So I feel like there are outlier years like that, and maybe this is one of those. But even if it is, I feel like we should recognize it and reward it. He actually became a good defender, which is something that he had a reputation for just being awful on defense for his entire career, which I guess, yeah, that's the Tibbs effect. He had never averaged more than 3 assists a game. He's averaging 6 now. He, I think, had been a 17-point-a-game scorer, was his high before. He's at 24 now, and he's the best player on a playoff team, which, yeah, I realize, again, this is where it starts to sound really homery. But if you watch the Knicks, it's the same thing that you're going to see if you watch Bradley Beal on the Wizards. Like, the effort that Julius Randle has to put into possessions to get a shot off, and he kind of has to put it in because no one else is capable of doing it, whether it's getting a shot for himself or creating a kick-out opportunity for someone else. He really has to drive the offense in a way that I think very few players around the league actually have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he does it really well. So I have Julius Randle at 4. I know he's not going to win the MVP, but I just wanted him to be in the top 5 because we should recognize how special a season he's having.
I agree.
But I also understand that, like, there are people who do not think he should be in the top 5, and that's fine.
I really wanted to put, I'll be honest, I really wanted to put him in, but I knew you were going to put him in and we could talk about him then. So, like, that's kind of what was my ultimate deciding factor, was just like, we'll talk about it on your list and I'll put on someone else. But yeah, I agree with everything you're saying here. Also makes him a very, very clear I think front runner for another award we'll talk about. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I actually have one question
Just
though.
for
Hmm.
yeah,
Just one question for discussion's sake. Um, so we've been talking
yeah.
about Randall. Um, I'd say if Jimmy Butler played 10 more games, I would put him in my top five. I think he's had that important of
Yeah, I
a
think he'll
season
be there.
for the Heat, um, both on offense and on defense. So with that in mind, and saying that like okay, the Heat in fifth and Knicks in sixth, like putting those guys in the list is fair. Why is it likely that like neither of us have Trey Young even close to our five?
That's a really good question. Um,
Because he wasn't even on my
I mean,
14, but I was just looking at it now and I was like, it's been a pretty good season.
well, I feel like the funny thing too is like, yes, some of this is personal bias,
Mhm.
where it's like both of us, like we root for Jimmy Butler and Julius Randle's teams, but we're not even the only people that are not talking about Trey Young as an MVP candidate.
Yeah.
Like I've heard people that aren't me who are like actual reputable, not that well, people who like get paid to talk about this stuff
We're
say, "Oh
at
yeah, Julius Randle should at least be like top
we're
5."
at we're at 6 months
Like
of this show. I think we can call ourselves reputable.
that's a fair point, yeah. Like, but like they're like like real like big J
Yeah.
journalists who like get paid to do this, being like, yeah, Julius Randle should probably be a top 5 MVP finisher. Like Jimmy Butler is having an under the radar MVP caliber season, and that's not something that gets said about Trey Young.
No.
I think part of it's also the defense, if I had to
Yeah.
guess,
It's
which
definitely
is weird
partly the
because
defense.
I feel like defense, I feel like defense just sort of matters when we decide it does for some like with these awards, because like LeBron's really not playing a lick of defense in the regular season at this point,
Hmm.
but we will like bring him up as an MVP candidate because he's LeBron James. But then like when it comes to Trey Young, the biggest knock is defense, and then
Or
it's like, okay, well actually we're gonna have something to say about him now.
I mean, or the guy that we're probably both going to have at number one.
He's an interesting one because he's actually not like
He's not bad.
the
He's not
yeah,
Trey
he's not
Young
like
levels
the
of
void
bad.
of defense that
Yeah.
Trey Young is. Like Trey Young, I think statistically last year was like the worst defender in the league.
Yeah. But yeah, if I when I made this realization earlier today, I was just kind of seeing what I think it's always helpful to see what like the fans of the respective teams think about the players because although they're going to be the most
Right.
biased, they're also going to be the most critical. Um,
Yeah.
and there does seem to be this consensus that ever since that early season chatter about like Trey doesn't get his teammates involved, John Collins wants the ball more, things like that. It seems like ever since that died down, ever since the Hawks switched from fired Lloyd Pierce and Nate McMillan took over,
Oh
there
yeah.
seems to be this consensus that Trey is getting everyone involved in a really good way, has become like a
Yeah.
way more intelligent offensive player, um, and is chucking the ball a lot less. And you can see that in like the 3-point attempts. I didn't even realize this. Last year, he shot nearly 10 threes a game, and this year he's down to 6. And on pretty similar shot attempts per game too. So he's like changing his shot profile just in year 3. And
I'm
yes,
pretty sure he's also taking a lot fewer of like the deep like 28 footers.
yeah. Well,
Which
yeah,
like
because that was the thing with Trey is that everyone was comparing him to Steph Curry, but throughout his first 3 years, he only shoots 34% from three.
yeah. It's
Like,
also so funny to hear like what has been said about Trey because there was also the talking point of like, is Trey Young assist hunting? Like that was the thing that we were saying earlier in the season.
I love that
While
talking
like
point.
just very briefly, very shortly after saying, is Trey Young not getting his teammates involved enough? So like Trey Young once again is the player that like we can look at and be like, yeah, the way we talk about him is a lot of what's wrong with like the way that we talk about basketball.
Mhm.
As far as why we don't have him in the top 5, though, I think it's the defense.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I also think that that's a really like very insightful question to ask.
Yeah, so Your number 4 was Julius. My number 4 is someone that
Julius.
you actually already mentioned, not on your list. Or you mentioned before that he is
Oh,
not on your list. That's Damian Lillard.
yeah.
Um, so Dame this year is averaging 29 points a game, 7.5 assists, 4 rebounds, 45% shooting from the field, 39 from 3 at almost 11 attempts a game, 93% from the line. That gets you a true shooting percentage of 62, which is, incredibly elite, upper echelon of the league. He's having an incredibly efficient season. Um, I also think that the the case, I think, for Dame is that I don't know if there's a team that has been more killed by injuries this year, just and inconsistencies, than the Blazers.
Yeah.
McCollum's missed 25 games. Let's see.
Zach Collins hasn't played.
Zach Collins hasn't played. Derek Jones has missed 13 games. Nurkic has missed 35 games. Um, I mean, and that's just like their starting lineup. Roko's actually been pretty consistent, and as has Melo. They've both played a lot of games. Um,
Hello.
but you have their second and third best players both missing 25 plus games. Um, unless you
Yeah.
want to say that Melo is one of their second or third best players, as you occasionally do. Um,
Listen, I got a little out ahead of myself one night while watching Melo have one of his stretches that he has as a Portland Trailblazer, where he just ISOs for 5 possessions in a row and scores every time. But no, I will not derail the discussion with that today.
um, but yeah, I think that's really the case for Dame, is that he is having another fantastic season, like kind of on par for the course for him. He's kind of had these similar types of seasons over the last couple of years where he's like close to 30 a game and like 6 to 8 assists and playing super efficiently. But I think it's the fact that he has really held held the team steady as they have got hit with so many injuries. Because this is a similar type of injury situation that the Heat have been in, that the Celtics have been in, and those teams have much worse records, or not
Yeah.
much worse, but 3 to 4 games worse records than the Trailblazers have. They are, I think, outperforming a lot of people's expectations for those injuries. I think if you told me at the beginning of the year that Nurk was going to miss 35 games and CJ was going to miss 25 games, I'd say like, oh, this Portland's probably going to be in the play-in.
Yeah,
But
if that, honestly.
right now they're in fifth place, and yeah, they're only a game out of the play-in right now. But if they can hold on to fifth or sixth with all the adversity they've gone through this year, I think Dame should be in that final five.
No, I think that's completely fair. I think you've laid out a really good case for him. Like I said earlier, like I wound up just coming down to Dame versus Steph, and
Mm-hmm.
sort of anecdotally just deciding on Steph, but like the case is there for Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, he just kind of kept this thing going against a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
In a way that like very few players could. In a way that we were like really yelling at Steph for not doing this year.
Yeah. No, definitely. Um, so, Tom, you're third. I'm really curious if we're. Oh, we don't have the same top three because I had Steph at 3.
Yeah. So here's the deal. My number 3 is Giannis.
Mm.
I have Giannis at number 3. I'm reluctant to even put him at number 2 for the same reason that I feel like we're all reluctant to have him winning the award, which is that like giving someone 3 MVPs in a row like puts them in a class that has literally like the only people that have ever won the MVP 3 years in a row are Larry Bird, Wilt, and Bill Russell. And like all three, like Bill Russell was on what was at that point the greatest basketball team ever assembled.
Mm-hmm.
Wilt was at that point thought of as like the greatest basketball player ever seen.
Also, not
like,
to be annoying, but also both of those guys doing that when there were very few teams in the league and less players to win the MVP.
Yeah, that's completely true too.
Yeah.
Like it's at some point it was like, all right, well, it's either Wilt or Bill. Yeah, let's just give it to Bill again. And like, this also isn't to say that like, oh, well, they were doing it against house salesmen, because like, I feel like we've all at this point seen the videos of like Wilt Chamberlain just speed boosting down the court to get back on defense, and it kind of becomes apparent like, yeah, he probably could hang in most eras. But yeah, and then like, so Wilt was thought of as like this great, fantastic basketball player who broke just a hilarious amount of records in the league. And then Larry Bird was the best player on what people then started to think was the greatest basketball team ever. And if you're Bill Simmons, you still think is the greatest basketball team ever. So I say all of this to say that like, I feel like the MVP, when you look at it in like this historical context, it is kind of the way that we look at players and go like, okay, well, where was he among his contemporaries? And for as great as Giannis has been, I don't think he's like that far head and shoulders above the people he's playing around. Like he won MVP last year and then got bounced in the second round of the playoffs and looked pretty bad.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put him second because then, and we talk about this in like a historical context, putting him second turns into, oh yeah, well he won 2 MVPs in a row, and then he also finished second in the third one, which we gave to Jokic. That was probably just better. Like this is how these discussions develop.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I'm reluctant to put him second. I'm putting him third. I think he's been fantastic this year. Like he's had 3 prime Shaq level seasons in a row. Like just statistically. There's a dog scratching itself just off the screen. Is that coming through?
Yeah, but it's fine. It's not that loud.
But yeah, no, like he's had 3 prime Shaq level seasons in a row. He's been fantastic. The Bucks are still really good. They're probably not the best team in the East anymore, which also I think kind of counts against them. But it is very funny, and we saw the same thing with Russell Westbrook when he averaged a triple double. How like when you do it the first time, it's such a big deal. Like when he averaged like 28, 12, and 5 the first time, we were all like, oh my god. And now he's doing it the third time in a row, and it's like, yeah, he'll probably make All NBA first team.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I have him third just because, like, hey, dog. I have him in third. I think that's, yeah, no, I have him in third. He's been fantastic this year, though. Like, I don't really have much more to say other than this is more of like a historical, I don't want people to get the wrong idea thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, my number 3 is Giannis. Who have you got? You had Steph at 3. Who's your number 2?
I had Giannis.
Oh, sweet. Let's talk about Giannis.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you were saying, I also kind of was reluctant to put him here. But when I was really breaking it down, and once I decided that Embiid and, like, these guys I thought had missed too many games, I don't know. I thought, like, once I knocked out Embiid, it felt like Giannis has to be second.
Yeah.
He's having just as good as an offensive season as he's had over the last couple of years, as you said. Should probably still be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate again. The Bucks are a little worse this year, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's missed 10 games. But, I mean, compared to some of the other guys on this list, 10 games is nothing. If you want to go through the advanced stats here, in box plus minus, which is...
Oh, he's like second or third in the league, or he's like 4th or 5th in the league in D box plus minus, I saw.
Yeah. And then in regular box plus minus, he is second right now, just behind Jokic. And in value over replacement player, he's also tied with Steph Curry for second.
Yeah.
So all the advanced stats back up that he has like been a top 3, top 5 player this year. His team is good enough to be in the MVP race. I don't see how we could, like, obviously Jokic is having a historic season. I'm sure he's going to be who we both have at number 1.
Yes.
But at the same time, Jokic's team is 45-24, and we're all like foregone conclusion that he is the MVP. The Bucks are 44-25, and we're using, like, I feel like there is an argument that the Bucks aren't good enough for Giannis to be the MVP. When Giannis is also having a historic season, it's just that he's done it for the last 3 years, so it's less impactful.
Yeah.
And I think last year's playoffs sour it a little bit for like maybe the media voters. But
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, I still think Giannis has got to be like one of the more underrated players. Like in a season after he has won back to back MVPs, um, and after he
Yeah,
signed, I know this has been talked about a lot, but it does feel like after he signed the Supermax, it's like the Giannis talk has died down significantly because it was all about, oh, he's going to leave Milwaukee, he's going to go to one of these big markets, and he's going to
he
join
was going to go
Luca
to
in
New York.
Dallas. He's going to go to New York. He's going to go to Miami.
Yeah,
But no, he's going to be in Milwaukee for the next 5 years, and now the media heard that and has decided to really quieten down talking about him because no one
yeah,
watches the Bucks. But
yeah. Which is their loss because the Bucks are awesome.
yeah,
Um,
so yeah, for all those reasons, I think Giannis was a pretty easy second for me. Even though once I got there, I was like, really, like couldn't I make this a little bit more interesting? But
but at number one,
yeah,
that would have been something.
but yeah, who is your number two? I'm really curious. I'm trying to think if I is it Embiid?
It is Embiid,
Okay.
actually. I left him on. I realize he has missed 20 games at this point, and in a 72 game season, that's too many to win MVP. But I'm fine putting him second in the MVP and just being like, yeah, well, if he played more games, maybe we could have a discussion at number one. Because I do think if he plays like 60 games this year, I think we're talking about him as I think MVP is a legit discussion.
Yeah, it's like a
between him
1A,
and Jokic.
1B
Because
situation.
before he went
Yeah.
down, it was yeah, exactly. Like when he was healthy, it was legitimately like there are people saying Embiid, there are people saying Jokic. Neither of them are entirely wrong because like Jokic. Well, I'm gonna save my like Jokic stats because I have a lot of funny Jokic stats that I would like to bring up. But yeah, I mean, Embiid's averaging 29 and 10. He's got a D rating of 104, which is among the best in the league. He's a one man top five defense, a one man top five offense, and I'm fine putting him at number two as opposed to number one, even though he's missed all these games.
Mm-hmm.
The Sixers probably aren't anywhere near where they are this year if he's not having the season he's having. I think there's also something to be said for like the way he kind of evolved his game to allow him to do this, because like there was a lot being made of it earlier in the season and we've quieted down on it, but he's playing with his face to the basket a lot more this year just so he can see double teams coming. And like that's like that kind of matters if it's like, okay, yeah, you actually like added something new and you are unlocking something new in your game and it has made you this much better. Like I think we should reward that.
I
Man's
completely
averaging
get
29
that.
and 12 and 38% from three. Like that's insane as a center.
Yeah. Just to be annoying for a second.
Please.
I'm trying to see what their record is without Embiid. I
It's
guess
probably pretty good.
yeah. This was gonna be this was my only annoying comment to make, and it's also because James is being really chatty in the chat right now.
Oh boy.
Do you does it matter, like, do you think it is all like worth an argument that the Sixers have like pretty much been steady in the 20 games without him and are still atop the league? Like, could that theoretically hurt an MVP case? Let's say I'm trying to think of what the hypothetical is here. Let's say Jokic had also missed 20 games, and the Nuggets were like 5-15 in those games, and the Sixers were 15-5, and the 20 games Embiid missed. Is that a tiebreaker situation?
That's what you probably give it to Jokic. Although actually, if both of them had missed 20 games, we get into a really scary reality where we might just have to give it to Giannis.
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't know. I'm looking over these games that he's missed now. Like, let's see. Oh, he did not dress for a 24-point loss to Cleveland in their third game of the year. Uh, did not dress for a loss to Denver. Did not play in a loss to Memphis. They lost to Detroit without him. They lost to Utah without him, but they might have lost to Utah with him. They beat Chicago by 22 without him. That's a pretty big one.
They beat the Lakers
without him. They beat
They beat the Lakers with him.
Yeah, they beat the Lakers
without him
in March. Lost to the Clippers without him. Lost to Denver without him. Beat Cleveland by 20 without him. Lost to Memphis without him.
The big one is this Milwaukee one.
Yeah, they got blitzed by Milwaukee without him. My God.
I don't think there's I from just the eye test here, or not eye test, but just like glancing at it, I actually don't know if there's that compelling of a case. It seems like they're like 500 without him.
I feel like they regress from like number one seed in the East, maybe best team in the conference, to just like team that will, on a good night, beat a team that they probably shouldn't, but will usually beat the teams they should. Because like they still have a really good roster without him.
Yeah.
What's the starting five if he goes down? Like Dwight, Tobias, Ben, Seth.
And
who's their fifth?
Danny Green. Actually, don't know who's been starting for them recently.
Yeah, Danny Green. Like that's a solid unit.
Let's see. He didn't play the other day. It was Simmons, Curry, Harris, Green, and Mike Scott. I think they try to keep Dwight off the bench. James, can you confirm this? Does Dwight normally start when they play? When Embiid doesn't play? Let us know.
If they have Dwight playing starter minutes, he might put up like 10 fouls in a game.
Yeah, I think that's why.
You remember that one preseason game that Greg Oden, like the first time we ever saw Greg Oden play against NBA players was a preseason game where he fouled out.
Yeah. And
that was a big deal because the preseason you get 10 fouls before you foul out. And Greg Oden was like, I'm taking all of them.
Yeah. But yeah. So now we're at our number ones. We both have Jokic. Tom, what are the fun Jokic stats you have?
All right. Well, let's see. I mean, aside from the part where he's, a center that's running point every possession, in terms of offensive win shares, he's at like 12 right now. Like I think he was at like 11.8 and then they won a game and now he's like at 12 flat. The only centers who have ever had more offensive win shares in a season are Shaquille O'Neal, Moses Malone, Wilt Chamberlain, and Walt Bellamy. Now, I do not know a ton about Walt Bellamy. However, like Shaquille O'Neal, we said it earlier, one of the most dominant players in NBA history. Wilt Chamberlain, maybe compared to competition, the most dominant player ever. And then Moses Malone, I think, is the most underrated, like all-time great big man in NBA history.
Super underrated for a guy in the top 5 scoring.
So, I'm fine putting, or I think it should be said that Jokic is among those 4 people when it comes to his offensive production this year.
Also, just a little Walt Bellamy, just to give him a little bit of love here. Walt Bellamy had a 5-year stretch. I mean, again, this was the 60s where everyone seemed to be able to put up like very ridiculous rebounding numbers. But he had a 5-year stretch where he averaged 27 and 17.
Jesus.
So I don't think he's someone to. So not someone we should just dismiss.
No, definitely not. Like that's more me not having the scope.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's like up there with Walt Bellamy and others. He has the second most assists in a season of a center, or for a center, ever this year, at 8.4. The record is Wilt Chamberlain having 8.6. Also, funny little note on the all-time center assist leaderboard. It goes Wilt, Jokic, Wilt, Jokic, 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 Wilt.
And
I'm throwing one too many Wilts in there at the end. But it's like Jokic has been in the league for like like 6 years, and 5 of them he has been among the most assisty centers ever.
And I'm pretty sure, like, not to discount Wilt at all, but I'm pretty sure that one season where he had 8.6 was like he set out to do that at the beginning of the season. It was some funny thing where he was like, "I've led the league in scoring, I've led the league in rebounding, and like this year I'm going to lead the league in assists." And then he just did it.
Yeah, so like that was Wilt basically doing like a circus act, like I'm going to do this now.
Yeah.
Also, I did add one too many Wilts in there at the end, so it just goes Wilt, Jokic, Jokic, Jokic.
Mm.
Which again, very funny because Jokic has been doing this for like 5 years, and he's on the all-time center assist leaderboard 4 times.
I have a fun Jokic stat. I'm sure you have a couple more, but just
Bring it
to
forward.
chime in one more. Now, do I know how value over replacement player is calculated? No. I don't know what these numbers mean, besides that this number indicates what their value is compared to other players who also have a number assigned to them. However, Jokic this year, wait, let me actually just confirm this really quickly to make sure it's not just my list. Okay, yep. Jokic this year, or I'll give you the top 5 really quickly.
Yes.
You have Dame at number 5. He's at 4.6.
Okay.
You have Luka at number 4. He's at 4.9. Giannis and Steph are both tied for 5.4. And then Jokic is at number 1 at 8.2. The jump from Jokic to Steph is the same as the jump from like 2nd to like 19th or something.
Oh, hell yeah.
So to put that into perspective, that is the jump from Jokic to Steph is the same as the jump from Steph to Jason Tatum. So yeah,
that's ridiculous.
I think that was definitely one of the big ones that really illuminated the dominance. Also, box plus minus is a similar ridiculous jump where Steph's at 8.1, Giannis is at 8.9, and then Jokic is at 11.5.
I think
like the stats when you just look at them are there because it's 27, 11, and 8 on like what would be some sort of new category of like 55, 40, 85 shooting.
Yeah.
And
like
then,
a very shooting split.
And then all the advanced stats are just also say like he has been the best player.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And it's funny because like I feel like the Jokic MVP candidacy started as like well, he has a lot of advanced statistical cases.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just a brief thing, win shares, which we've talked about the imperfections of on this episode. He is 4.1 win shares ahead of Rudy Gobert. He's in first at 15 win shares this year. Rudy Gobert, so the jump from Jokic to Rudy Gobert is the same as the jump from Rudy Gobert to Ivica Zubac.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
28th. But yeah, no, like it started as he has a lot of advanced stats behind him, and then we just gradually accepted like, well, actually, he's also got a lot of regular stats behind him, and also look at him play, he's really good.
Yeah. And yeah, the only thing that's hurt his case all year is the team, but they're pretty solidly in 4th, and you know, the precedent was set with Westbrook a couple years ago that if your team is like not one of the 5 best teams, but you still have an historic season, then you still can win.
Oh, absolutely. And like they lost their second best player a month ago, and they've just kept right on chugging.
Yeah.
Like it's been pretty seamless for a team that like Jamal Murray seemed integral. Like I still think Jamal Murray is integral to that team, but like seemed irreplaceable on, and they've just kept it moving, which might say more about Michael Porter Jr. than it does about Jokic. Because Jokic, I think, has been pretty consistently amazing, whereas Porter, and we'll get to this with most improved player, has really stepped up. but yeah, there is something to be said for them just wearing the loss of their second best player and rolling along.
Yeah, definitely. All right. I mean, that's all I got on Jokic.
That's all I got on MVP as an award.
Okay. I'd say the one person that we didn't talk about was also Luca.
Yeah, yeah,
He's been
that's a
good.
good point.
28, 8, and
I do
9.
wonder if we look back at him this year in the same way that we're going to look back at like Jimmy Butler not being an All Star this year,
Mm.
and
Mm.
go like, why he finished like 12th in MVP voting? Why did he finish that low?
Yeah. I think might end up top 10. Um,
Yeah,
also,
actually, that wouldn't surprise me.
I'll give you 2 seconds on the Jimmy Butler MVP case if he had played 10 more
Please.
games. This is entirely advanced stats based, but the advanced stats love Jimmy. The win shares we were just talking about, he's in 5th, above Steph, above Joel Embiid. And again, this is a cumulative stat. So despite missing games, he is still in 5th.
Yeah.
Offensive box plus minus. Okay, his offensive box plus minus is not going to be super high. He's in 15th. Defensive box plus minus, he is in 7th. Regular box plus minus, he is 6th. And finally, the value over the replacement player, he is 7th. So there is a advanced stats case for him being one of the 10 best players in the league this year when he's been playing. I'm just going to say that. And a lot of people who are smarter than me have written really good things about actually why they think Jimmy Butler should be the Heat player that's in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation over Bam. But the Heat have kind of like... I mean, the argument isn't that he's like, Bam's been bad. It's that Bam's been great, but Jimmy's been like amazing. My friend Giancarlo did a really good thread the other day where he was comparing all of Jimmy's like advanced defensive numbers, not just like this advanced stat stuff, but also things like deflections and like, you know, like ball, like how they measure like your pressure on the ball and like whether someone's like dribble time is like their touch time is like higher or lower when they're being guarded by this person, and he compared it to Kawhi's Defensive Player of the Year season, and they were like incredibly similar numbers.
Interesting.
Yes, very interesting. So I would highly recommend everyone check that out. But yeah, that's gonna be. I'll stop talking about him.
No, I think you have a like. There's a surprisingly strong case there.
Yeah, I mean, there's no case for him to be in the top 3. It's the case for him to be like 5th.
Yeah, I feel like this season we kind of just wrote the narratives, and then it was like, okay, well now like we can have a little bit of movement, but like Jimmy's not going to be in like the top 5 in the MVP. Like Luka won't be in the top 5 in the MVP. Like the Mavs were under 500 30 games into the season.
Yeah.
We have to remember that. Which, yeah, I mean, maybe that's how it goes because I feel like, again, narratives kind of come to be out of what actually happens. But yeah, no, like I wouldn't be shocked if Jimmy winds up top 10 in the MVP at least.
Also, I think the simplest stat I can say is that when Jimmy Butler has played this year, the Heat are 32-19, which would put them at a pace to like have a better record than the Bucks do right now. So that's how.
Also,
that'll
when
be my
Jimmy
final
Butler
thoughts.
wasn't playing, wasn't it also like when Jimmy Butler wasn't playing, they were like
No one was
going
playing.
through like most of their team.
Yeah.
I remember talking to you about the lineups during those games.
Yeah, no, we had a James will remember we had a pretty brutal 2 back-to-back against Philly when at the very beginning of a stretch. This is fun to look back on now because the Heat have righted the ship. But we had a back-to-back stretch against Philly where our starting lineup was like, I'm not kidding, it was literally like Vincent, Hero, Duncan, it would have been Kelly and Precious was the starting 5. And it was pretty bad. We almost won one of those games though. It was like Gabe Vincent's in his first start of the season, he had scored like 24 points, and he looked pretty good. And it was a pretty swift
Buddy, Gabe
downfall from
Vincent
there.
always looks pretty good.
That's true. Oh yes, James is reminding
No,
me
but
that that game. This was an overtime game. The Sixers player Dakota Mathias, who is now no longer on the team, hit a really big three in overtime to kind of the dagger. I forgot about that guy. But anyway, what should we do next? And should we do these quicker?
we probably should,
Yeah.
if I had to guess. All right, let's go for most improved player. It's Julius Randle. It's got to be Julius Randle,
Yeah.
right?
This was really easy for me.
Who could it be if it's not Julius Randle?
My three, I didn't even research my three. I just had my three, and then I looked at it afterwards, and I was like, "This was right. This is right." And
Yep.
I had Julius, Christian Wood, and Jeremy Grant.
Can I throw a fourth one at you that I think might be intriguing?
Sure.
Michael Porter Jr.
Okay. No, he's on the long list, but it was more so that I don't know. I expected him to be good, so I guess that's my bias there.
Can I throw some stats at you from just since Jamal Murray has been hurt?
Okay. Yes, that's a good idea because he has been ridiculous since then.
Since then, he is averaging 25 points and 6 rebounds a game. Would you like to guess his shooting splits in that time?
It's like 55 and like 48 or something. Or am
It is 58, 51, 85.
Yeah,
Just ridiculous shooting numbers.
it is ridiculous.
Denver's 11-4 since that injury happened, which feels like they would have played so many more games since then. But they're 11-4 since the injury. Over the season, he's averaging 19 a game on 55, 45, 80, which is still really good. I don't think he's going to win the award, but I did think there was an interesting case for like how much he improved mid-season.
Yeah, no, definitely. So other guys I was
You
considering.
want to talk about Jeremy Grant?
Yeah, let me get up his numbers. So I did my little thing on Jeremy Grant like halfway through the season. But yeah, I mean the narrative on Grant that we've talked about this year has been, he left Denver to bet on himself and say like I can be the first option on a team, and he proved everyone right. I mean, proved everyone wrong. Who was doubting him and saying that Denver paid him too much.
He's the first option on an NBA team right now.
That is true. You could also make an argument that him being the first option on one of the 3 worst teams in the league isn't a good thing, and that maybe that is maybe those things are correlated. But in terms of pure numbers, his points per game average jumped 10. He doubled his assists, 1 more rebound. He's completely kind of changed the way he plays too, which I think is the main reason I have him on here. Going from a guy who primarily shot corner threes and dunks off of cuts to one who actually like ISOs a bit and creates shots for himself. Really impressive. Shot profile looked completely different. Before this year, the most shots he had attempted in a season per game was 10.3. This year was 17.3.
He jumped, like he had never scored more than 12 points a game, and now he's a 22-point a game scorer.
Yeah. So I think his case is really interesting. I mean, I think we're both kind of set that it should be Julius Randle. But
like Jeremy Grant's team is 20-50.
Yeah. That could also be the good argument to use against my other guy, which is Christian Wood.
Yeah, the Rockets are bad.
Rockets are really bad. To be fair, he's been out a lot this year, which also might hurt him.
Yeah.
But this is a guy who just 2 seasons ago averaged 8 points a game in 20 games between his time in Milwaukee and New Orleans, where he barely played. And then last year he had a very random um, like ascendance on the Thunder, not the Thunder, on the Pistons when Blake Griffin went out.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of talk about like, is he actually good? Like, do we know, or is he just kind of benefiting in this weird situation? And this year he
Yeah.
proved he was actually good.
The whole
Averaged
time.
21 and 10 this year on pretty good efficiency, 51, 37. Not a great foul shooter, but 2 assists, a steal, a block. I mean, he is a good, relatively young player, and I don't think anyone thought that was the case when he was just like moving around the league from Philly to Charlotte to Milwaukee to New Orleans to Detroit within like 4 years.
And like
And
this was all as an undrafted free agent too.
yeah,
Like it wasn't even like it was a Josh Jackson thing where it's like, well, he was drafted fifth overall, and we still see a lot of those traits in him, so we'll take a shot on him. Like it was, he didn't really have that pedigree.
yeah. Any other guys you were thinking of?
Um, did I have anybody else? No, no. I had Julius Randle. I think I made the case for him when I was making the case for him for MVP.
Mm-hmm.
He improved in a lot of ways this year. But if we're in agreement, and I think we should be, then I don't think there's any need to continue on this.
I have one case, one more. Like you can uh, uh, push back on this if you want,
Okay.
but we'll actually have two cases. Um,
Okay.
One, which I think is a little bit more of a compelling case, is hold on, let me just get up the numbers. One is Terry Rozier.
Ooh, I like that actually.
Now his points per game has only gone up by 3 this year, but
Yeah.
it's really all in the efficiency. Terry has gone from a like kind of a chucker last year in Charlotte when it was the first time he was ever the first option on a team to a really, really steady, efficient scorer. He shot 46%, 40% from 3 on 8 attempts, and 82% from the field. Shot went for 21, 4 and 4 this year with a steal. Um, and if you just, I mean, all you have to do is like open his basketball reference page to see that like before last year he wasn't even touching these numbers. Obviously, he was coming off the bench for Boston behind like Isaiah Thomas and then behind Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
But I do think he is another example in the Grant vein of someone who has like went to another team to become a bigger role than they were in their previous team and has shown to be way better than people thought they were. Because I think last year the rap on Terry was that he is just kind of the same guy as he was in Boston, but he's just shooting more. But now he's way more efficient and is like, you know, one of the 2 or 3 best players on this team. A team that has been
Oh yeah.
up and down this year, but at certain times was like the 4 seed. And also on a team that has had a ton of injury problems, and Terry's only missed 4 games. So that's the Rozier case.
Yeah. Like I think they were the fourth seed until LaMelo and Gordon Hayward got hurt at the same time.
Yeah. And my final one that is debatable, I suppose, because if you look at the numbers, it actually looks like he's not improved. But it's Andrew Wiggins. Wiggins, before this season, his the highest shooting rate he'd ever had in a season was 45%. This year he's shooting close to
Okay.
48. The highest 3-point percentage he'd ever had was 35%, and this year he's shooting close to 38.
Ooh.
He
Nice little improvement.
he has become a much better defender this year. If you look at, he has the highest defensive win shares number he's ever had. His highest before this was in 2018 when he had 1.6. This year he was at 2.6. His defensive BPM, now the Warriors were a bad defensive team, so his defensive BPM is going to be negative. However,
Yeah.
before this year, his highest was negative 1.4. and this year he brought it up to negative zero point 0.6. And
Actually, pretty
then
impressive.
before this year, he's actually tied what his value over replacement record was. So if you look at all the advanced stats on Wiggins, the numbers don't really show it besides the efficiency, but all the advanced stats on Wiggins suggest this was his best season. So that's the Wiggins case. Don't know if it's that compelling, but that's what I got.
I don't think you have to unseat Julius Randle, but like I'm happy he's improving.
Yeah, no, he's getting
Good for
better.
him.
Do you want to do rookie of the year?
Yeah, let's get to it.
Okay.
So who do you have on the short list for this one? Because
Okay.
mine was 3 names.
What'd you say?
I was wondering who was on your list for this because I had 3 people written down, and I didn't really have others that I felt like I could make the case for. Like Emmanuel quickly has been fun, but he's a solid playable backup guard. Like that's not in the same category as the 3 names that I have on this list.
Are your 3 names Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, and Tyrese Halliburton?
It's exactly those 3.
Okay. So I have those 3.
Those are 3 years. Okay.
I had 2 more. Well, I had a few more, but the 2 more I had highlighted. I had quickly highlighted as one of my 5. And then the 5th one I had was Jayshawn Tate.
Okay. That's a good one, actually. I did not have him, but I can see why he would be on.
Who has who's been like the one consistent part of the Rockets this year.
Yeah.
If you read what Rockets fans say about the team and about Tate, most people say like he's like the most important player for what he does on defense. He's not quite a good shooter yet, but he averages 11, 5, and 3. Little like a steal and a half a block, 50% from the field. He has like one of the higher win share ratings here, despite being on one of the worst teams in the league, which is like says something.
Yeah.
And yeah, all this coming from a guy who's undrafted, so I think that's pretty interesting. Just like he's a good story.
No.
The other guys I've considered, but didn't really end up putting on the short list. Sadiq Bey has been pretty good this year. Sadiq Bey is
another good one on a very bad team, but like
another guy who's
right
like
spot for Detroit.
He's very surprisingly in the top 20 in threes made this year. I didn't know that, but he is shooting 39%. Isaac Okoro, who numbers don't look that good, I'll be honest, but he is second in the rookies in minutes played and has started every game for Cleveland this year. And he has the toughest defensive assignment every night. And I don't know, I think there's something interesting about when you can tell a coaching staff really trusts a rookie, especially someone as young as Okoro.
Oh, absolutely.
I have 3 more. Desmond Bane.
All right.
Has been a ridiculous shooter this year. He's shooting 44% from 3 on like 5 attempts. Has been a great bench player for Memphis. Patrick Williams has actually been pretty good. I didn't even realize this.
I like that one. I like that one a lot.
And I don't know if you've seen all the stuff with Bulls fans who try to compare him to Kawhi Leonard. But
I actually think I've seen a couple of those.
But if you watch the highlights of his good games,
there's nothing there.
Yeah, he does move similarly, and he has a similar like mid-range bag that Kawhi does. So I get it. And then finally was Sadiq Bey's teammate Isaiah Stewart, who has been really, really good since the Pistons got rid of Blake. Let me get his numbers, because like his numbers on the year aren't great, but I'm pretty sure his numbers in the second half of the season are really good. But yeah, something you'll notice about all the names that we listed is that it's like just LaMelo and Anthony Edwards who are like the big lottery picks we're talking about.
Yeah. That's a good point, actually. Yeah, because I mean, Well, I'm trying to think. Like
Well, Patrick
Obi
Williams
got
was
drafted
too.
into a spot, or like Obi Toppin got drafted into a spot where he's behind Julius Randle. Like Okongwu got drafted into a spot where he's behind Capella and then John Collins,
Hmm.
probably. Um, who else got drafted in 2020? Let's see. Wiseman, we've talked about him on this one. I feel like that was just like 19-year-old center wound up being raw.
Yeah.
Killian Hayes, I feel like had a not so great rookie year.
No, he's
Although I
barely
think he was
played.
in a pretty tough spot.
Yeah, he's barely played, and then he got injured. He got injured, and it's tough. I don't think it's fair to really evaluate him too much after this year. Um, so yeah, you're at the point where
Aaron Nesmith's actually been a pretty solid player.
that's a good one. But yeah, you're in this weird spot where the last
Denny
two.
Avdia, like
Mm.
I was going to say, Denny Avdia was like showing promise until he got hurt.
Yeah, he was. Um, we're in this weird spot now where like these undrafted guys are showing up in the rookie race every single year. I mean, last year Kendrick Nunn finished second, or third, I forget where he ended up finishing. This year, like,
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of people have Jayshawn Tate on their ballots. Like, it's interesting how a lot of these guys are like a lot of these lottery guys are not have not been amazing at the beginning of the season,
I
like in
think
these early seasons
I
so
forget.
far.
I forget who it was, but somebody a couple of years ago when Van Vliet was like lighting it up in the finals and guarding Steph in key moments, had a really interesting piece about how like there are a lot of players that'll play a couple extra years in college and come out with a higher basketball IQ and like will be perceived as lower ceiling players, so they don't get drafted as high or they don't get drafted at all. But then they step in and it's like right away they're making an impact because they know this game and they can play.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're seeing more of that come to fruition. And also just like, I don't know, teams are really kind of like going into the mud to get players.
Big time.
Where it's like, oh yeah, we found him on like, he was the 8th man on a G League roster, but we really liked what he did. And now he's here.
Or Jayshawn.
With all this being said though, No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, or like with Tate, Tate played for in Belgium in 2018, and then in Australia in 2019, like just like playing around the world, and then the Rockets found him.
Yeah. And the Rockets do that like pretty regularly too. Like they found Daniel House.
Yeah.
I feel like they've kind of going back to even when they had Harden in there, they have a running line of just like guys we sort of just found somewhere.
Yeah.
That we're going to bring in and make work. But with all this being said, Dave, who do you have as the rookie of the year?
I've gone back and forth on this a couple times today. What is your like criteria when you're deciding this? Are you trying to project potential, or are you just trying to say who has the best season?
I think it should be who had the best season, because I like the draft is when we project potential, and that's how we decide. True. Oh well, like this guy went 1, this guy went 2, this guy went 32. Like I feel like that's a discussion better had around draft time. Whereas now, once we're giving an in-season award, we're giving it out based on, and I say we, but like they're giving it out based on who played better this year and who did more on the court. So it's a weird discussion because I think also like inevitably when you give one of these awards out to a young player like that, there's going to be some element of, oh yeah, we're going to expand this out to their whole career, and we're going to say, well, this is a judgment of their potential. At this point, I'm kind of stalling, I realize. But I'll say that I think I'm going to go with LaMelo Ball as the rookie of the year. It's tough to be too certain on a player, like between the two of them, because obviously LaMelo Ball missed all the time, and Anthony Edwards has had so many bright spots. Anthony Edwards is also on a worse team. Not that that like necessarily should matter in the Rookie of the Year because it's not like it's the MVP. It's not like it's Coach of the Year or anything. Like it's an award for who did really well as a rookie. But I have LaMelo Ball. He wasn't a starter for this whole year, but he was I think the most like identifiable player on an actually good team, and then like wound up being a really solid contributor for them, which I'll value over being a star on a team that's really bad this year, which Anthony Edwards is. I mean, they're probably a couple pieces away from being a low like play-in contender, maybe, but this year the T-Wolves were bad, and I'll give LaMelo the nod.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's kind of where I ended up too, because as much as I want to give it to Halliburton, I don't know if he really has the numbers to justify it, even though if you could argue that he... Actually, I don't even know. If you're arguing like efficiency stuff, Halliburton had the best year.
Yeah, that's true.
Edwards has been just... He's had so many highs and so many lows that it's becomes difficult to evaluate him, and his like averages don't even like feel like they speak to what he actually did this year, because I feel like 19 points a game on like not great efficiency, but he also had that like 40-point game the other night where he was amazing, and he's also had plenty of games where he goes like 2 for 15 and you're wondering what type of shots is he taking. So he's a tough one to evaluate. So because of that, those two, I actually think I might just go with LaMelo too, because I have too many reservations about the other guys. And if my only reservation about LaMelo is that he missed too many games, then I'm fine with that. I don't care about the missing games part for rookie.
I will say too, like I think there was a game early-ish on this season, like 30 games in or something, where I was watching the Wolves and I was like, all right, like it's really easy to see it with Anthony Edwards. Like it's not always there, but when he has a possession where he, I don't know, puts everything together, like handles the ball through some traffic, cuts to the lane, finishes like through somebody, it's really easy to see why he's thought of this way, but also it's not always there yet. So like if we want to talk potential, I think they both have like very high ceilings, but right now I feel like LaMelo's been the better player this year. Also, to be fair, like I feel like most of Anthony Edwards' like highs, or most of the things that I've seen where I go, oh, that was cool, Anthony Edwards, were like off the court stuff. Where it's like him speaking up and being like, okay, I'll field the question about Jimmy Butler making fun of Karl Towns on the court. Who is Alex Rodriguez? I don't know. Oh, he's going to own the team? Oh, cool. Good for him. I've never watched a lot of baseball, but I could play baseball professionally. Number 4 hitter, cleanup. I could do it all. Like he's a really dynamic personality, and I really enjoy watching him be who he is. But I think Melo's had a better basketball season this year. So we're in agreement on Anthony Edwards?
Yeah, I think so.
Do we want to do defensive player of the year, or do we want to do sixth man?
Let's do defensive player of the year and end on sixth man, because defensive player of the year is kind of tough, because we were talking about this before. Like, we don't know how to evaluate this. We haven't watched all these games. We can look at the advanced defensive metrics, but at the end of the day, it's just going to be like really vague things we're arguing here. I wrote a list down, and do you want to hear the list? I'm sure this is pretty similar to what you had.
Yeah, let's hear it.
My list has Gobert, Ben Simmons, Bam, Tybal, Embiid, Capella, Draymond, Giannis, Jimmy Butler, and Drew Holiday.
Yeah, no, that's about who I would have had in the running.
And then if I had to make a 3 out of that, a 3 without putting 2 Sixers in the top 3, because you could make a good case for Embiid and Tybal in the top 3. I want to put Gobert, Simmons, and Jimmy, but or Gobert, Simmons, and Bam. The tough part is, and this is my bias, but you know what the tough part is? The best defensive team in the league this year is the Lakers, and who do you pick from them?
Because like we talk about LeBron having missed too many games, but Anthony Davis has also missed a lot of
Yeah.
basketball games.
So the way that
We
I went
can't
about
really.
this was looking at all these guys are from teams who had like good defenses this year. So,
Yeah,
but there's no Laker because I don't know who to pick. And
yeah. Like you're gonna pick Mark Gasol, whose most notable contribution to the Lakers this year has been like being told he should play more by people that don't decide if he should play. Um, can I give you two names that I had that like won't win it, but I thought had kind of an interesting case?
Mhm. It's one of them, Nerlens Noel.
So Nerlens is one of them. Yeah, I realize he won't because he was a backup center for most of this year, and like I get that, but he is leading the league in like blocks that probably should have been business decisions. Where it's like, oh my God, this guy's streaking down the lane. If I don't block this shot, I'm gonna get dunked through the floor, and he blocks like 100% of those if he decides to jump for him, which usually he does because he's like allergic to business decisions.
Hmm.
The Knicks are a top five defense in the league. They've been seamless without like when Mitchell Robinson went out, and he's holding opponents to like 51% at the rim, which is among the best of anybody that's played more than like 40 games this year. So I liked that. I liked his candidacy. I don't think he's going to win it. I think it will be Gobert.
Yeah.
But then the other one I wanted to shout out was Clint Capella, who,
Mhm.
like the Hawks aren't a defense first team, so he won't win it. But the Hawks are 9.5 points better per 100 possessions when Capella defensively when Capella's out there versus when he's not out there. Opponents are shooting 3.5% worse when he's out there versus when he's not out there. He is leading the league in rebounding, which I know like there's been all the discussion recently of is rebounding still valuable? Is it not? And then the ultimate like conclusion of it's probably not valuable as like a one skill player thing. But he's leading the league in it, which I think counts for something. And he's holding people to 51% of the rim. And I think the league leader is Gobert at like 46.
Mhm.
So like he's close.
Yeah.
But I feel like our sort of inability to evaluate this kind of ties into how this gets evaluated at large, which like, and I think Bam said it, like it's very reputation based and it's very like, you don't get the props for it until you get them. And then it's like, okay, yeah, you just keep getting them.
Yeah.
So like in a given year, yeah, Rudy Gobert will probably win it because people know Rudy Gobert is a good defender and haven't probably watched all of the games because it's really hard to do. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I was talking about this with a friend the other day. This is like, in a way, even more narrative based than some of these other ones because the way you talk about it turns into like, what are they good at? So, Gobert, it's rim protection. He's the best rim protector in the league, and people are afraid to go take contested layups against him.
Yeah.
With Ben Simmons, it's that he can guard any position. With Bam, and I was just realizing this, like this is what my perception of it was. His case was, but then it's also like what NBA.com writes about it. It's that he's a big guy that can guard guards. Like that's what his narrative thing, and obviously that's great. That's what his like narrative thing is for Defensive Player of the Year. So like they wrote guards when defended by Bam are shooting 38.9% this year, including 31% from threes. And just a select little example here is some players who have been matched up on Bam, Steph, and this is really small sample size stuff, but just like when they've been matched up on Bam, Steph was 1 for 5, Bradley Beal 1 for 7, Devin Booker 3 for 11, Kyrie Irving 4 for 14, and LeBron 2 for 8. So that's Bam's case is like entirely based off that. With Giannis, it's kind of like a similar thing to Simmons, but also like the athleticism, the chase down blocks, stuff like that. Who else would it be? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of all I've got. NBA ladder also has in the next 5 Jakob Poeltl.
Okay.
Which
Sure.
he is apparently making offensive players shoot 5.3% worse than they normally do when guarded by him. So that's something.
That's something.
um, uh, I'm actually gonna say I think it should be Simmons, because I think, I know Gobert is like a defense onto his own, but I do think, and is like so important to the Jazz do. Maybe it's just fatigue talking here, but I think what Simmons does, the versatility, is maybe something that appeals to me a little bit more. Again, this is super biased and like just what I'm thinking, but like, yeah, there's no like real.
No, I think that's fair.
Here.
Like, I feel like, and again, like we are imperfect narrators here, but I do feel like there's an element of like what Ben Simmons does might be a little bit more unique and like a little bit harder to find than a rim protecting center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe this is also my own bias of rooting for a team that like lost Mitchell Robinson halfway through the year and just had Nerlens Noel right behind him. But yeah, like I think there's definitely a legitimate argument to be made that Simmons should win it, because like we know he's one of the best defenders in the NBA, and we know he's one of the best defenders in the NBA in a way that like maybe Bam is the only other person who is a defender in that way. Like it's really hard to find someone that guards 5 positions in the league. So I don't know. I'd like to see Simmons win it.
But yeah, it'll probably just be Gobert. If I was predicting.
So then we come to sixth man.
Sixth man, I have just a bunch of guys written down.
I have like 4.
Okay.
Just because I was trying to think of like who realistically could. My 4th one is a bit of a doozy.
Okay. Oh, this is the one you were teasing to me earlier.
Let's talk about Matisse Thybulle.
Okay. Tell me.
6th man of the year, contender Matisse Thybulle.
Mm-hmm.
So probably be all defense, which I think is particularly impressive considering he's playing 20 minutes a night this year. He is leading the league in defensive box plus minus and steal percentage, which a nice little advanced stats case for him.
Yeah.
Now I would like to just talk about that defensive box plus minus thing for a little bit, because he has a 4.3, which is leading the league. He is the only player above 4. What is defensive box plus minus? Well, it's a stat that estimates how much better your team is defensively per 100 possessions with you out there versus if they just had an average player out there. So he's 4 points better than average defensively per 100 possessions. He is the only player to be above 4 points better. Nerlens Noel and Draymond Green are second and third with 3.4 and 3.2. Giannis is at 2.7, and last year's Rudy Gobert is 2.5, who might be Defensive Player of the Year this year. Last year, Giannis won Defensive Player of the Year with a 4.1 defensive box plus minus. 2018-19, Giannis had a 4.1. Rudy Gobert won Defensive Player of the Year with a 2.5. Prime Dwight Howard had a 2.8. Defensive Player of the Year Marcus Gasol had a 3.1. The last time someone had a defensive box plus minus higher than 2020/21 Matisse Thybulle, would you like to guess when it was and who it was?
Is it Ben Wallace?
No. Ben Wallace at his peak had like a 3.5. It was Nate McMillan in 1994. He had a 5.5.
Wow. Okay.
So I say all this, and like obviously that's it's a rate stat. So it's adjusted for how much you play, and he doesn't play that much, which makes it a lot easier to be like a colossal pest on defense. And yeah, maybe scaling 20 minutes of production out to 100 possessions is slightly irresponsible. My argument, though, is that that's exactly the point of the Sixth Man of the Year award, is to take players that only play like 25 minutes and say, well, of the players that only play 25 minutes, you had the biggest impact. And usually we just frame that as scoring, because usually teams send their best scorers to the bench and someone comes on and gives them like a spark or whatever offensively. I would argue that Matisse Thybulle having such an outsized impact compared to like players that start makes for a compelling case for him to be the defensive or the sixth man because he's such a force defensively and allows them to do so much with bringing like a Ben Simmons off for a rest because they know they have him coming on to just pick up the mantle. So yeah, basically my thesis is that Matisse Thybulle should be the sixth man of the year because he's very good at defense.
I really like that case, and that's a nice flip on how this award is normally judged. That was good.
I don't think he will, but
No,
I think he'll at least be up there.
I don't think he will either, but this award is like, honestly, I feel like the stupidest of these awards because,
Yeah.
especially in the way it's judged, because it is always like, this is why Lou Williams has won this award like 5 times. It's just who can score the most points off the bench. And doesn't matter if they're a detriment to their team and the way they do it. Doesn't matter if they play like 33 minutes a game, but just come off the bench.
It doesn't matter if like they get to the playoffs and cannot come on the court anymore.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if like, a big, he had a great game the other night, but like a case like Jordan Clarkson's, who is averaging 18 points off the bench, but is really inefficient this year. He was super efficient in the first half of the year, though, and his efficiency has gone off a cliff.
Yeah.
And now he's like below average. So in the last like 30 games, he's been pretty bad.
It winds up just being like who scores a lot of points off the bench for a good team.
Yeah, that's always
like
what it is.
I was looking at Marcus Morris, but Marcus Morris has been a starter for the Clippers for the second half of the year, so like I took him off. Who else did you have on your list? Because I do think Jordan Clarkson's probably the favorite for this.
Mm-hmm. So you have his teammate Joe Ingles.
Yeah.
You got Derrick Rose. Tim Hardaway Jr. I think is a fun one who should be considered. Chris Boucher, although I don't think the Raptors are good enough, but he has been one of the better bench players. Another guy on a team that's not been good enough for him to win it, but T.J. McConnell has been really good off the bench for the Pacers this year.
Yeah. He's another one who has like a defensive case.
Yeah.
Too.
And then Bobby Portis has been way better than I would have expected him to be for the Bucks this year.
Yeah.
And then who was my last one? Oh, Gallinari. But Gallinari's probably missed too much time. But Gallinari has kind of like slotted into this like veteran 6-man role in a way that I don't think I was expecting him to after being like a starter for the entirety of his career. So,
yeah, I feel like when they signed him, it was kind of like, okay, what? They're gonna start him at the 4, start him at the 3, what? And no, yeah, I think he has started into a good bench role.
So I don't know who to pick out of those. I hesitate to go with Clarkson because I don't like how that's the general consensus of this award. I also kind of hesitate for Ingles because I don't know if he's been. I don't know if he has the numbers for it. I kind of like Bobby Portis. Actually, Ingles' numbers are pretty good. He's averaging 12 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists on 50, 46, 84.
That's good. I would like Bobby Portis winning it just because, like, you don't see bigs win this award often.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I have a pick for this one. I think I don't have a pick for this one, but I'm going to just gut check say that in terms of what I've seen, I don't know, I really like your Thybulle pick. That's a good call to try to go for a defensive guy.
When I stumbled upon this Matisse Thybulle bit and I like started thinking through it, a lot just unlocked in my brain. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna beat the drum with Matisse Thybulle because like he has probably been just as impactful as someone like a Jordan Clarkson this year. It's just been in defense, and it's harder to quantify defense. So we just kind of foist that to the side and pretend that it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Um, and I think there's also been guys like Rose, like Tim Hardaway Jr. I don't mean to like just like go against Clarkson for this whole time, but like Rose and like Tim Hardaway Jr. who are similar in the sense that they just come off the bench and score for you, but have both been far more efficient than Clarkson has been. Also, can you help me out here? I wrote a note down. I don't know what I meant. I wrote MEL next to all, like in this list of names.
NEL?
M.
MEL?
Yeah. Oh, Mellow. That's what I meant.
No. I mean, Melo's been a very, like, he's played a bigger role than I think anyone ever thought he would when they signed him halfway through the year last year, and has been really good, and has been one of the few Blazers that's been, like, healthy all year.
Yeah, he's only missed a couple games.
Which is a big thing when, CJ is missing 25 games, Zach Collins isn't playing, Nurk is missing 30 games. So, like, I think there's a case there if you want to make it.
Yeah, just to give.
Let's see. What are the Melo stats this year?
Yeah, and while you're doing that, I'm going to get up the Tim Hardaway stats. Just a quick Tim Hardaway thing. Now he's played. It's on the threshold. I mean, started 29 games, which feels like it's on the threshold.
Okay.
But he's averaging 17.
Melo's scoring 13 points a game.
Yeah, no, Melo. Like, there's a reason I put him there. His numbers look good. And Hardaway is averaging 17, 3, and 2 off the bench, 45, 40, and 81. And then and Hardaway's also on a team that, similar to Melo, on a team that has had so many injuries.
50 points, 4 assists.
Yeah, and Rose has been really efficient too. But yeah, on a team like the Mavericks that has been so injury-ridden, so COVID-ridden this year, Tim Hardaway Jr.'s missed like one game. So he's been probably one of the more steady parts. So if I had to pick a 3 here, I'm going to go with Rose, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Ingles. And then I'll throw Tybal and Clarkson in at 4 and 5.
I'm probably going to, like, if I had to pick who I think will win, I think it will be Clarkson. Just because, I think, like, the book kind of gets written on these things. Who I think should? I legit think the Tybal thing is real and should happen. I think D Rose should be up there. And then I can't in good conscience pick against Melo. So those would probably be my top 3, even though I do think it will be Clarkson.
Yeah. All right. Well, final little wrap up here. For MVP, we both had Jokic. We actually aligned on a lot of these things.
Yes.
For Rookie of the Year, we both had LaMelo Ball. For Most Improved, we both had Julius Randle. For Defensive Player of the Year, I think we both just dejectedly said that... Oh, no, I have Simmons winning. I want Simmons to win. Yeah, but both dejectedly said...
I want Simmons to win, but I think it's going to be pretty.
Yeah. And then for Sixth Man, we're kind of all over the place, but there's some consensus here about Rose, Tybal, and an acceptance that Jordan Clarkson will probably win, unless it gets a little... I don't know. There's a big
Everyone
case.
Tell your friends to tell their friends to vote for Matisse Thybulle for Sixth Man of the Year. Let's get this going.
But yeah, that's all I got. You got anything else?
No, it's going to be it for me.
Coach
I feel
of
like
the
we
Year?
really got all of this one.
I don't know how to do Coach of the Year. Tibbs? Monty Williams?
Yeah, like I feel like Coach of the Year is the extreme of us saying we don't really know how to evaluate Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah. But also...
Just because it's like, okay, yeah. Like Coach of the Year, this is an offshoot of the calling MVP a narrative award is BS discussion. Because, like, Coach of the Year winds up being narrative just as much as any of these. Where it's
Almost
like,
more so.
yeah, this guy, you know,
Because
yeah, like
it's entirely based on
they
this
were
team.
bad last year.
Yeah.
They're good this year.
It's
Like
like
one year where the Bucks had been a playoff team and then became like a 3 seed one year. Like,
yeah,
it's just the narrative is always just, were you good last year? Are you good this year? All right, let's talk.
yeah, it's just expectations based. Like that's why I feel like Monty Williams and Tibbs have to be the top two for this, because both of those teams weren't expecting to be that good.
Yeah, I would say so.
And I mean that's probably where the list ends, right? Is there anyone else? I'm getting up. Oh, Quinn Snyder.
I mean,
Doc. Yeah.
Has Quinn Snyder won one yet?
I don't think so, but he's been.
Like,
I want to say he's been in the top three before.
I would be fine giving Quinn Snyder this award.
Yeah.
Just because, like, every Jazz discussion all season has been, well, they've started, like, moving the ball way better. They're playing team defense. Like, it's a lot of the stuff that we say they're good at seems to be the kind of thing that you could attribute to a very good coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd say the top four, now that I'm looking at it, has to be some combination of Snyder, Monty Williams, Tibbs, and Doc.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty good four.
And you can, throw in Steve Nash there if you want, or throw in.
Steve Nash is an interesting one because, like, he's not going to get any votes because they have all that talent. But I think in terms of, like, the stuff that we conventionally say about people that finish pretty high in Coach of the Year, like, how many different starting lineups has he had to make work this year?
Yeah, I know. Like, it's got to be one of the most difficult jobs this year.
Oh, absolutely. Just, again, because they've been without so many people for so long.
Yeah.
Maybe Nate McMillan?
Yeah.
Probably not, but maybe. Like, they've been a lot better since they hired him.
Yeah.
I feel like you can tell how confident we are about this award by the amount of shrugging we've done talking about it.
No, I saw it today. They're, I think they're 25-11 since Nate took over.
Yeah, like, that's insane.
Yeah.
But this probably wraps up our awards episode. You'd say, right?
Yes, I think I'm all done.
I'm glad we did it.
Yes.
I'm glad we got this.
We had a nice long one. Thank you everyone for tuning in for this long. Surprised there's still 4 people here.
This was like a season preview with Tom and Dave.
It does. But yeah.
But I'm happy we did it. Everybody stay tuned. See y'all.
See ya.
I don't know why I did this.